Here's a shocking reality about modern medicine. Sometimes finding a cure isn't as profitable as treating symptoms forever. Today, we're exploring how this plays out with macular degeneration, where the last major breakthrough was 2 decades ago.
That's such a thought provoking way to look at it. The ARED study in 2001 was groundbreaking, but since then we've seen surprisingly little progress. Why do you think that is?
Well, let me break down the economics. Right now, patients either take daily supplements indefinitely or receive regular eye injections that can cost upwards of $2,000 each. That's a pretty reliable revenue stream for pharmaceutical companies.
Hmm. And those anti VEGF injections are particularly interesting because they're not just expensive. They need to be administered every few weeks or months, creating an ongoing relationship with healthcare providers.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really fascinating. The global market for macular degeneration treatments is expected to reach $11.5 billion by 2025. That's billions of dollars tied to managing this condition rather than curing it.
So, if we follow the money, the healthcare system has essentially created a subscription model for vision.
And you know what's even more concerning? There are promising research areas like gene therapy and stem cell treatments that could potentially lead to a cure. But when you look at where the big research dollars are going,
Let me guess. They're mainly focused on developing slightly better versions of existing treatments rather than pursuing actual cures.
right, like AREDS 2, which basically just swapped out beta carotene for lutein and zeaxanthin. Useful? Sure. Revolutionary? Not even close. And meanwhile, about 11 million Americans are living with some form of macular degeneration.
The human cost of this is staggering. We're talking about people losing their ability to read, drive, or even recognize faces, all while taking supplements and getting injections that only slow the progression.
You know what really opened my eyes about this? I was reading about a clinical trial for a potential cure that struggled to get funding. The researcher noted that investors were more interested in treatments that would require ongoing administration.
Well, that certainly puts things in perspective. It's like the system is designed to maintain chronic conditions rather than eliminate them.
And here's something that might surprise people. It's not just pharmaceutical companies. The government actually has a stake in maintaining the status quo too. Think about the jobs, the tax revenue, the entire infrastructure built around managing chronic conditions.
That's such an important point about the broader economic impact. A cure might be better for patients, but it could potentially destabilize entire sectors of the healthcare economy.
Let me share some numbers that really drive this home. The average patient with wet AMD spends about $50,000 on treatment over their lifetime. Multiply that by millions of patients, and you start to understand why there might not be much urgency to find a cure.
So, what you're saying is that we've created a healthcare system where the financial incentives actually work against finding cures.
Exactly. And it's not even necessarily a deliberate conspiracy. It's just the natural outcome of a system where managing chronic conditions is more profitable than curing them. But here's what gives me hope.
Oh, what's that?
We're starting to see more awareness of these structural issues. There are now organizations specifically focused on funding research for cures, even when they might not be the most profitable option. And patients are becoming more vocal about demanding better solutions.
That reminds me of how public pressure helped drive HIV/AIDS research in the 1980s and 90s. Sometimes awareness and advocacy can actually shift these entrenched incentives.
Absolutely right. And you know what's interesting? Some countries are experimenting with new models where pharmaceutical companies get paid based on their ability to cure diseases rather than just treat them.
Now, that's the kind of systemic change we need to see more of.
So here's what I think we should all take away from this. When we look at medical progress, or lack thereof, we need to look beyond just the science. We need to understand the economic incentives that might be holding back real breakthroughs.
And maybe start asking harder questions about why certain conditions remain treatable but not curable for decades.
Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about macular degeneration. It's about how we approach healthcare as a society and whether we're truly prioritizing what's best for patients over what's most profitable.